Looking for magic cards? At flipsidegaming.com you can now use the promo code LVD to get a 10% discount on orders over $10 while supporting the channel at the same time. Hello and welcome to another episode of Friendly Friday, a weekly series where we take a look at budget, standard or modern decks, and this week we're taking a look at a red-white Dinosaur Aggro in standard, a deck built to leverage the various cost reducers for dinosaurs. We have 4 copies of a Kinjalli Scholar, a 1 mana 03 that says dinosaur spells you cast cost 1 generic mana less to cast. And we also have 4 copies of Otepec Huntmaster, a 2 mana 1/2 with the same ability, and can also tap to give target dinosaur haste until end of turn. So these 2 cards are very important in the deck, and you basically always want them in your opening hand, since they give you a very big mana advantage, letting you cast your entire hand before you're supposed to, so they give the deck a lot of explosive potential. So let's take a look at all the various dinosaurs that we find in the deck, starting out with 4 copies of Sky Terror, which is actually the only non-bow with our cost reducers in this deck, since it doesn't have a generic mana cost, but it's still a fine card by itself as a 2 mana 2/2 with flying and menace, and of course it's a dinosaur so it still has some other synergies going on. Then we have 4 copies of Kinjalli's Sunwing, a 3 mana 2/3 with flying that says creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped, so a nice ability when you're in a racing situation so your opponent can't block your attackers, and also very nice against haste creatures from the mono red deck, since when those enter the battlefield tapped they won't be able to deal any damage the turn they come into play. Then we have 2 copies of Territorial Hammerskull, which kind of acts as a removal spell in our deck, as a 3 mana 2/3 that says whenever it attacks, tap target creature an opponent controls, so we can make sure to get the biggest blocker out of the way. Next up we have 4 copies of Rampaging Ferocidon, a 3 mana 3/3 with menace, which says players can't gain life, which is always nice in an aggro deck, and whenever another creature enters a battlefield, Rampaging Ferocidon deals 1 damage to that creature's controller, so another nice way to add up some damage and try and burn out the opponent. And of course we will take some damage ourselves from our Rampaging Ferocidon, but in most cases we're gonna be the aggressor, so it's not gonna matter as much. Then we have 4 copies of Imperial Aerosaur, a 4 mana 3/3 with flying, and when it enters a battlefield, another target creature you control gets +1/+1 and flying until end of turn, so nice way to give some of our creatures evasion for a turn, to get in for those last points of damage, and a 3/3 flyer, especially if we can cast it on the cheap, is also very powerful. Next up we have 3 copies of Bonded Horncrest, a 4 mana 5/5, but it does come with a drawback in that it can't attack or block alone, but of course we have a lot of dinosaur buddies that can make sure that our Horncrest can keep attacking, especially in combination with our flying creatures that most of the time will have good attacks in the air. And then our curve topper, Charging Monstrosaur, a 5 mana 5/5 with trample and haste, so great stats and especially powerful if we can get it down a turn or 2 early. Then we also have 4 copies of Lightning Strike to round out the deck, to deal those last points of damage or take a key creature out of the game. And then our mana base is pretty simple. We've got 4 copies of Inspiring Vantage, which is actually a very important card in the deck since the deck can be pretty color intensive and we don't want to play any tap lands, and we're also on a pretty low land count, so having an Inspiring Vantage early is a very big advantage. Then we have a lot of basics, 7 mountains and 8 plains, and we round out the deck with some deserts to give us some mana sinks in case we're flooded. We've got 2 copies of Ramunap Ruins to deal 2 damage to an opponent, and 2 copies of Shefet Dunes, which can give all our creatures +1/+1 until end of turn. Then taking a quick look at the sideboard, we've got 2 copies of Fragmentize to deal with artifacts or enchantments. We've got 4 copies of Priest of the Wakening Sun, which can be a nice tool against aggressive decks, as it can gain us 2 life every turn. Of course we do need to make sure to take out our Rampaging Ferocidons, otherwise we won't be able to gain any life. Then we have 2 copies of Thopter Arrest as another versatile removal spell, especially nice against various indestructible gods, or the gods from Hour of Devastation, which otherwise keep coming back. And then we have 2 copies of Chandra's Defeat, another great card against the mono red decks, also fine against Teamer Energy as it can take out Chandras or Glorybringers. Then 2 Abrades as another removal spell, can also deal with artifacts. 1 copy of Dinosaur Stampede, which can be a nice tool against token decks that try to chump block your large creatures. And then finally 2 Planeswalkers, which we can bring in versus control decks, as they give us an alternate angle of attack that's not as vulnerable to sweeper effects. It does cost 5 mana, which is a lot for a deck only running 23 lands. Of course, doesn't get reduced by our cost reducers, which is why we're not running it in the main deck. So that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the play, and this hand looks pretty good. We don't have any 3 mana cost dinosaur, so we can't play anything on turn 2 with this color, but we do have a lot of those in the deck. We are scheduled to cast Horncrest on turn 3, and then some Monstrosaurs on 4, so things can go wrong if our opponent deals with the color, or if we keep drawing more Monstrosaurs, but otherwise I like our chances. Opponent with an Opt end of turn, and a Spirebluff Canal, so looks like a blue-red control deck of sorts. We're just gonna run out Horncrest. Could get censored or Essence Scattered, but it does not. So next turn we can attack with both the Kinjalli Scholar and the Horncrest. Opponent with another Opt. And yeah, we've got Charging Monstrosaurs for days here. So if our opponent doesn't kill our collar, then things are looking good. And our opponent does indeed manage to deal with our Kinjalli Scholar, so we don't get to attack with Bonded Horncrest. And that's pretty sad. Can even give it flying, but it won't be able to attack. So now we have to hope we find more lands to run out our Charging Monstrosaurs. Opponent passes, we find a Sky Terror instead, so let's move to combat. Alright, we do manage to attack with the Horncrest, which is nice. Opponent takes 8, and we'll run out Sky Terror. And say go. So if your opponent is on a dedicated control deck, they could have something like Hour of Devastation, dealing 5 to all creatures, but then if we do find land number 5 and manage to follow up with our Monstrosaurs, I think we'll be fine. And there we see Hour of Devastation. Could have been a reason not to play out the Sky Terror, but if then our opponent deals with the Aerosaur, then we can't attack with the Horncrest. And instead we just find a Kinjalli Sunwing. And if now our opponent has some counter spells for the Monstrosaurs, things could go south, which is why resolving it after the Hour of Devastation would have been nice. Alright, land number 5 is an Inspiring Vantage, just to rub it in. We'll get in for 2. Might see a Lightning Strike here, or an Abrade. Run out Inspiring Vantage, say go. So, not really liking our chances at this point anymore, given that our opponent has 6 cards in hand. But there we see a Primal Amulet. So, instant and sorcery is reduced by 1. So they could still be holding an Essence Scatter or a Censor. But I think we just jam this Monstrosaur and hope for the best. Does resolve, alright, that's good. So no 2 mana spell that can kill the Monstrosaur in this spot. Opponent at 7. So they will need to answer the board, and then we can keep adding more Monstrosaurs. Supreme Will, main phase, that's good. So no Torrential Gearhulk incoming to block the Monstrosaur. And if a second Monstrosaur resolves, then our opponent is in a lot of trouble. Alright, we get to untap, find a Kinjalli Scholar. So we could run Kinjalli Scholar into Monstrosaur, but I don't really see the point of doing so. So I'm just gonna run out the Charging Monstrosaur by itself here and see what happens. Opponent counters it with Supreme Will, that's fine. And we'll get in for 5. Opponent's at 2. We'll pass. Opponent with a Dragon Skull Summit now, so are they gonna run out Nicol Bolas here? Opponent with the Locust God. Alright, 4 mana for 4. If they draw cards, they can make Locusts. But I think we're just gonna run out another Monstrosaur here and jam. So we actually have a lot of options here, since the Rampaging Ferocidon kind of punishes the Locust God for making those insects. But I think our opponent's gonna be forced to chum block here anyway, so we might as well run out another Monstrosaur and see if our opponent's just dead to that one. Alright, our opponent scoops it up. So we're up against the Grixis control, which means we do want to consider Huatli. I don't think we want the Thopter Arrest, since Locust God at 6 mana is kind of late for the Thopter Arrest to come into play. So I think we only want to take a look at Huatli, and what do we want to take out? Kinjalli Sunwing doesn't shine in this matchup, neither does the Territorial Hammerskull. So I guess we'll take out the Hammerskull for this matchup. Alright, so this is an interesting hand. We have double color, which is usually a very good start, but we don't actually have a lot of dinosaurs that directly benefit from it, given that Sky Terror doesn't get reduced and Monstrosaur is still at 5. So unfortunately I actually think this is a mulligan, which is strange for a hand with Inspiring Vantage and 2 colors. This hand's a keep, but it's not exciting, and Sunwing I think we can do better. So this hand definitely lacks the explosiveness from the first hand, and drawing another land there is kind of a disaster. And our opponent also on the play, drawing more lands is not where we want to be. Sky Terror is probably going to get killed or countered, and then we're not left with a lot of action here. At least we have these 2 Ramunap Ruins, which are better than just mountains, but things are looking pretty grim. And another land is not good. Let's run out to Sunwing. Kinjalli Sunwing not getting countered, instead our opponent just deciding to look at the top 4. So they must have another answer to the Sunwing, or they just don't care. Alright, let's get in for 2. Opponent could also be holding a sweeper effect, in which case running out another Sunwing is not where we want to be. So I could also see not running out the second Sunwing, given that our opponent just took 2, and they could be holding on to an Hour of Devastation, but on turn 4 control decks usually want to cast Glimmer of Genius or Hieroglyphic Illumination, so we might as well put them to the test to see if they have a counterspell here. Alright, and our opponent does have the Glimmer. If they also have the Hour of Devastation, then this game is over. If they don't, then I guess we get to keep playing. Our opponent passes, we draw another land. So let's get in for 4. That surprisingly worked. And I think we'll run out the other Ramunap Ruins in case we find some Shefet Dunes that we want to use instead next turn. Opponent casts another Glimmer. I think in response we'll use the Ramunap Ruins, just in case our opponent has a disallow to counter it. So our opponent's at 12. But they are holding 8 cards. So hopefully their hand is all counter spells and draw spells. Instead they do decide to fire off Hour of Devastation. They probably were concerned with a Charging Monstrosaur as a follow-up, which is why they contemplated for so long. We're just gonna run out a sad Bonded Horncrest with no buddies. And now we're hoping for a Charging Monstrosaur top deck. Huatli would also be pretty powerful here. Opponent with a Battle at the Bridge for 5, killing the Horncrest. We just draw a Huntmaster, which we will play. And now we're just waiting for the opponent to deploy their win condition, so we can move on to game 3 here. And there we see cut to ribbons. So Ribbons is a way for them to deal some damage to us. And there we see another Glimmer of Genius. So our opponent could be using their artifacts that cost reduces and then double spells to double a big Ribbons to try and finish us off. But I imagine they'll have another win condition as well. And there we see the Primal Amulet. And another cut on the Huntmaster. So they're probably just gonna kill us with these Ribbons in the graveyard. As we keep drawing Huntmasters when it's not relevant anymore. So yeah. This deck definitely wants to have those explosive starts. Doesn't really deal well with heaps of removal spells. Our opponent is close to transforming their Primal Amulet, at which point we will probably see those Ribbons cast. Another Glimmer of Genius. So our opponent's deck does have a lot of air in it. If we do have a fast start in game 3, we should be able to hopefully punish them. As we see another Primal Amulet into Hour of Devastation, just to transform the first amulet, put a counter on the second one. And there's a Charging Monstrosaur, which is actually not the worst draw. Let's play around Supreme Will by running out the land. Get in for 5. But our opponent can just cast Ribbons for 1,000,000 here. And there we see Star of Extinction. Well, that's pretty appropriate, I would say, against the dinosaur deck. Destroys a land. Interesting that they didn't destroy the Ramunap Ruins. And there's a Lightning Strike, which doesn't do much for us. So our opponent at a virtual 7 life with the Ruins and the Lightning Strike. And another Star of Extinction just to blow up a land. I guess we will cast our Lightning Strike. And apparently opponent also killed the Ramunap Ruins there, but didn't really tell us, so we didn't get a chance to deal 2 more damage to our opponent. Run out Rampaging Ferocidon, so our opponent should have been at 7 here. Don't think it'll really matter. Harness Lightning on the Ferocidon. So now our opponent has 2 Primal Wellsprings, and they can copy the Ribbons twice. So our opponent has both Star of Extinction and Hour of Devastation as sweepers, both pretty slow. So if we do have a fast start, we can hopefully go under those. Alright, and there's a Torment of Hailfire, not even casting the Ribbons from the graveyard. So that's just gonna kill us in 1 big shot. Alright, on to sideboarding. So opponent's got an interesting deck going on, but if we do have a fast draw, we can definitely kill them before they can deploy all their expensive spells. Don't think we want anything from the sideboard currently, so I think we'll just run it back. Do want to be on the play, and this hand looks quite good, so we'll keep. Got a turn 1 Caller, turn 2 either Huntmaster or Ferocidon, turn 3 Horncrest. So if our opponent has a bunch of Torments of Hailfire, Glimmer of Geniuses and Star of Extinctions in hand, then we're doing fine. And we even found Huatli. So what's the plan here? I think I like running out the Huntmaster here, since then next turn we can actually both play the Horncrest and the Ferocidon and give the Horncrest haste while attacking with the Kinjalli Scholar as well. So hopefully no red source killing the Huntmaster, instead just a tapped Dragonskull Summit. So that's good. So yeah, let's go for it. We can run out Horncrest. Opponent with an opt-in response, that's fine. And then Rampaging Ferocidon deals 1 damage to us, but that's fine. give the Horncrest haste. Get in there with Collar and Horncrest. Opponent takes 5 to 15, scheduled to take 8 next turn. And then we even have a Lightning Strike on top. So hopefully we can dodge a Sweltering Suns. Horncrest is big enough where it survives a cut to ribbons. And there we see cut on the Ferocidon instead. That's still not a disaster. And another Huntmaster to draw. So we could run that out, given that it will get 1 damage in before our opponent gets the opportunity to cast a Hour of Devastation. Seems fine, so let's start by getting in for 6. If we did have a Charging Monstrosaur here, the game would have been over. But we get to keep playing. And yeah, I think it's probably worth it to run out the Huntmaster here, even if it only gets in for 1 damage. Another Ether Hub. So a Harness Lightning would be able to kill our Horncrest at this point. So I am interested in running out this Rampaging Ferocidon, as we can also give it haste. Move to combat and get in with these. And we are presenting lethal here, so if your opponent has absolutely nothing, they're dead. If they have Harness Lightning for the Horncrest, they take 4 to 5, and we have Lightning Strike to put them to 2, and then eventually Ramunap Ruins can kill them. They will get to exile the Horncrest, but we do have the Ferocidon in play, so they actually don't gain any life. So they perhaps should have cast it before we got to attack. So that'll happen. To 5, so actually not a disaster here. And we'll say go. And then hopefully no Hour of Devastation here. But this looks like an Hour of Devastation. Alright, so I guess we Lightning Strike in response here, just because. Put our opponent to 2. And then hope that this Ramunap Ruins can go the distance. Alright, Inspiring Vantage is not bad. Opponent with 6 lands. Glimmer of Genius. So if we can find an untapped land here, then the game could be over. And their opponent concedes. Well, they weren't technically dead, but let's see if we were gonna draw land. We were, so I guess their opponent was dead. Awesome, managed to beat control. On to the next one. Alright, we're on a draw with a hand that's not great, given that we have 4 lands, but it is good that we have Collar into Ferocidon with a Lightning Strike. So I think we keep and then hope to draw some more dinosaurs instead of more lands. Opponent is going to 6. And at least one of our lands is a desert, so even if we flood out, we can have some use with our land here. And we did draw another mountain, so hopefully that doesn't continue, since of course one of the reasons for running all these cost reducers is that you can run fewer lands and draw more action. And our opponent looks to be on a green-white deck here. So Ferocidon should be a decent play here. And Aerosaur is a nice follow-up as well. So let's see what our opponent is working with. Another Evolving Wild, so they're off to a pretty slow start. And they get a mountain, so they're full on Naya. And yeah, I think we're just gonna jam our Aerosaur, target Kinjalli Scholar here. Not really gonna play around any sweepers. We do take one from the Ferocidon. Get in for 4. So we're off to a decent start here. Opponent cycles a cast out. And they're cycling a Shefet Monitor, so they get to search for a basic or a desert, and then draw a card from cycling. They found an island, so opponent going pretty deep. And we drew another land, which is unfortunate, so let's just get in for 6. Not even sure we want to run out the Huntmaster, but I guess we probably do. Opponent could be a Fumigate deck, but we're probably not beating a Fumigate here anyways, so let's run out the Huntmaster, take one from Ferocidon, and say go. So our opponent is at 10. So if they have absolutely nothing, they're dead to an attack plus a lightning strike and a protection of the Heckma. I guess in response we want to lightning strike our opponent. Opponent's at 7. They got their enchantment in play. So I guess there's no point in attacking with the Huntmaster. So we'll just be attacking for a total of 4. Put our opponent to 3. And this Ramunap Ruins is also a little less effective. So let's see if our opponent has a sweeper effect here, or if they just have a second protection of the Heckma. They do have 7 mana, so they could have lots of things here. Abrade takes out the Aerosaur. And end of turn I think we'll use the Ramunap Ruins here, as it's not gonna get any better. Opponent's at 2. Find another Aerosaur. Alright, so we can play that. Target the Ferocidon, give the Aerosaur haste, and then our opponent needs 2 answers. That seems pretty good. No point in targeting the Huntmaster since we're tapping that to give the Aerosaur haste, and no point in targeting the Collar since our opponent has the protection in play. So let's target the Ferocidon. Give our Aerosaur haste, and our opponent needs either a Fog effect or 2 removal spells to stay alive here. Alright, and our opponent doesn't have it. On to sideboarding against a pretty strange deck with protection from the Heckma, a bunch of removal spells, some ramp cards. I guess Huatli is gonna be decent. Thopter Arrest does not take care of enchantments, and Fragmentize can't take care of the protection of the Heckma. So I don't think we want either of those. So what do we take out for Huatli? Probably the Hammerskull is my guess. And run it back like this. And just try to have a fast start. Hope to dodge potential sweeper effects. Could have also considered our 1 copy of Dinosaur Stampede. But if our opponent is on a bunch of Fumigates after sideboard, then I'm not a fan of that plan. This hand looks quite good, so we'll keep. Turn 1 Collar, turn 2 Huntmaster, turn 3 Charging Monstrosaur with double haste. Alright, even better. So now we have the option of Huntmaster into Monstrosaur, or we can just run out Ferocidon next turn. Probably better to run out the Huntmaster first. Channel our Initiate from our opponents. So they're trying to ramp as well. Bonded Horncrest a draw. So by running out Huntmaster, next turn we can both run out the Horncrest and the Ferocidon, give the Horncrest haste, attack with Collar and Horncrest. That's pretty appealing. Could also just Lightning Strike the Initiate if we're scared of what the opponent's trying to do. But it's a lot more efficient, I think, to run out the Huntmaster here than to Lightning Strike. So I think that's what we're going for. And hope our opponent can't do anything too powerful here. The Initiate is doing a lot of mana fixing for them, as we see Drover of the Mighty as well. Now that our opponent has 2 mana dorks in play, using Lightning Strike is less appealing. So our opponent does still have 2 mana up, but I think we're just gonna go with our plan of Horncrest plus Ferocidon here. So let's go for it. Horncrest first. Is our opponent casting an Essence Scatter here? No, an Abrade on our Huntmaster. That's unfortunate, since now we won't be able to also run out the Ferocidon, and we can't give the Horncrest haste, so that's a well-timed removal spell from the opponent. So that'll work. And now we're stuck saying go. Mirage Mirror, interesting. Had we just cast the Charging Monstrosaur there, then things would have been a lot worse for the opponent. Our opponent can pay 2 mana to copy our Charging Monstrosaur if we played here. Things get pretty interesting here. So do we want to run out the Monstrosaur and trade it for the Mirage Mirror, get in for 5? We could Lightning Strike one of the 2 mana dorks. Then our opponent will probably copy the Horncrest, but that can't block alone. So actually I like that. So I think we Lightning Strike the Initiate, since the body is more relevant than the Drover, even though it has a limited amount of uses. So if our opponent wants to copy the Horncrest, then they don't have any good blocks. I guess they could just have another spell. Nope, they're just copying the Initiate. That works. So if we were to attack with the Collar and the Horncrest, then they could eat the Collar for free. Hadn't really considered that. So yeah, I think we're just gonna run out the Rampaging Ferocidon and pass the turn. So perhaps should have just cast the Monstrosaur and taken the trade, but didn't really consider our opponent using the Mirage Mirror on the Initiate. Opponent running out a second mirror, but they have no land, so our opponent is shields down here, which means we get to run out the Charging Monstrosaur, get in with everyone. That seems pretty good. And then hopefully our opponent doesn't have a sweeper effect next turn, but they only have the Drover, so they might have some mana issues in casting most sweeper effects. Get in for 13. Opponent's at 7. And now it's their move. They do have 2 mirrors active now, so they will be able to copy our dinosaurs. Is this a Fumigate? It is, isn't it? Well, opponent did have to draw the planes there, but now they do gain a whole bunch of life back up to 12. Alright, Huntmaster is actually pretty good, since now we get to run out Huntmaster and Sunwing. And give Horncrest haste next turn. But those 2 mirrors are pretty annoying. Opponent cycles a Scattered Groves. Another Inspiring Vantage, so if we run out Horncrest, give it haste, attack with Sunwing and Horncrest, our opponent cannot block our Horncrest, so they can just block our Sunwing to prevent 2 damage. That seems fine. So give the Horncrest haste. Luckily for us, Mirage Mirror is kind of a nombo with Bonded Horncrest, and our opponent scoops it up. Alright, so managed to beat our opponent despite a timely Fumigate. So on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw with a hand that's not that great, but it's hard to mulligan a hand where you have your 2 Collars and 2 Sky Terrors and a Sunwing, so I think we'll keep. Since if you can imagine this as a 6-card hand without one of the Monstrosaurs, then that's a snap keep. And of course if we draw any of our cost reducers, we're very happy. Alright, there we go, Otepec Huntmaster. Now we have to choose if we want to run out the Sky Terror or the Huntmaster first. But let's see what the opponent does to get some more info. Renegade map. And are they about to miss their second land? Looks like they are. So I guess we do run out the Huntmaster, since worst case scenario, next turn we run out either the Sunwing or the Sky Terror, give it haste, get in for 2, which would be the same as if we were to just play the Sky Terror here. But there is higher upside if we do find, let's say, another cost reducer, then we can play that and the Sunwing. Opponent with an Anointer Priest, their opponent clearly on a tokens deck. And they did find land number 2, so they didn't have to sacrifice the Renegade map quite yet. Found land number 4, so that means we can run out the Monstrosaur next turn. So do we want to run out the Sunwing or the Sky Terror here? I guess we can run out the Sunwing here and give it haste. Makes our opponent's creature enter battlefield tapped. And then at some point we can run out both Sky Terrors in the same turn, which is pretty mana efficient as well. So our hand developed quite nicely, I would say. Drawing that cost reducer is definitely key, as now we get to run out Monstrosaur ahead of schedule. Opponent is now sacrificing Renegade Map. Let's see if they have the hidden stockpile to go with it. What we're most afraid of from the token deck is if they have a Fumigate on turn 5. And they do have the stockpile, so our opponent will be able to gain some life from the Anointer Priest. Do they have a Fatal Push for the Sunwing? They do. That's fine, since the tokens weren't really gonna block the Monstrosaur all that profitably. Kinjalli's Collar here is actually nice, since we get to run out Collar plus Monstrosaur still. And then next turn we can run out Monstrosaur plus Sky Terror. So we'll get in for 5. Opponent takes it. Opponent did find a tapped Concealed Courtyard, so they might have a Fumigate in hand, and if they draw a land, they get to cast that next turn. So we do have to be careful not to overcommit, but that's one of the problems with this deck, is that you're relying on your cost reducers to run out most of your dinosaurs, so it's difficult to play around sweeper effects. So most of the time you're better off just hoping they don't have it and just running out all your dinos anyways. I guess Monstrosaur is one of the best follow-ups to a sweeper effect, so we might want to save one of them. Meant to block with our Kinjalli Scholar there, but accidentally took 1 damage. So we did find a land, so we can run out Sky Terror plus Monstrosaur if we want to. And I think we just go for it here, since I doubt we can beat a Fumigate here anyways. Run out Monstrosaur, give Sky Terror haste, get in for 12 points of evasive damage, and hope our opponent can't top deck an untapped land. Since we know if they missed a land drop early, of course they do get to scry with the hidden stockpile, so they do get to search for that 5th land. Start from start to finish, that's fine, so they do gain 2 back up to 16, but that does mean they don't get to scry, so that's all fine. Get in for 12. And hope we can go the distance here. No blocks. Interesting. So our opponent is at 4. Can we dodge land Fumigate? They haven't slammed a land yet, so I suppose they don't have it. And with this second Sky Terror, we should be able to close out the game even if our opponent makes a bunch of tokens. Opponent casting Finish to destroy a Monstrosaur, that's fine. So they'll gain a life from the stockpile end of turn, go back up to 5. They have to chump the Monstrosaur, and then our 2 Sky Terrors should be good enough. This time we will block with our Collar. I guess if they have another Fatal Push on the Sky Terror, the game isn't over. Instead they're just getting a token with the stockpile. Going back up to 5. Alright, let's run out the Sky Terror. Give it haste. And that does it, sweet. Managed to beat tokens game 1, which is always nice. So we get to bring in Dinosaur Stampede for this matchup. Fragmentize. And could also consider Huatli as another angle of attack. Territorial Hammerskull is not at its best. This is a matchup where Rampaging Ferocidon shines. Could see shaving on some copies of Bonded Horncrest since it just gets chump blocked, and pretty vulnerable also to all those sweeper effects. So I think I like this kind of configuration. Lightning Strike also not great. Could maybe take out 2 Lightning Strikes to still keep in the Horncrests. Try something like this. And this hand looks acceptable. I've got a turn 2 Huntmaster, turn 3 Sunwing with haste, turn 4 Monstrosaur. Opponent with Courtyard into Legion's Landing, so they're off to a nice start. And another Monstrosaur, not the worst draw if our opponent doesn't have removal for the Huntmaster. If they do have a Fatal Push for Huntmaster, then could be in trouble. Evolving Wilds, so no hidden stockpile for the opponent this turn. Get in for 1. And another Huntmaster, alright. Let's see if our opponent has a Fatal Push. Alright, no Fatal Push, that's good. So next turn we can even consider running out second Huntmaster and then run out the Sunwing. Alright, our opponent does cast Fatal Push now, so they probably just drew that. So now we have to decide between Sunwing and Huntmaster. Huntmaster lets us cast Monstrosaur on the following turn. So there's definitely some appeal to playing out the Huntmaster. Opponent probably top deck the Fatal Push, so they probably don't have a second one. So I think I like running out the Huntmaster more here. And say go. So our opponent must have a hand with maybe some Fumigates, maybe some Processions. They also have green, so they are also running Vraska. 4 mana for Anointed Procession. Found another mountain, so yeah, I think we're just running out the Monstrosaur and then keeping the Huntmaster on defense to block the Vampire. Get in for 5. Say go. So does our opponent have a token producer? Since then they would be getting close to transforming Legion's Landing, which is quite powerful with Anointed Procession. Just an Evolving Wilds for the turn, so they could have maybe a start to finish that they can cast at instant speed. Instead just an Anointer Priest, so no start to finish. We picked up a Shefet Dunes, so I think we're just running out a second Monstrosaur here. And hoping our opponent doesn't have Fumigate next turn. Opponent blocks with Anointer Priest and with a Vampire, so that strongly points towards Fumigate. So opponent will be able to go back up to 15 with a Legion's Landing and an Anointed Procession in play. That's not great for us. But we do get to follow up with a Sunwing. And there's a Fumigate. Could have been a reason to hold back on the second Monstrosaur and just run out the Sunwing. Could have also given it haste, so yeah, perhaps got a little too greedy there. But Sky Terror is also nice. So Sunwing into Sky Terror, our opponent with 1 card left in hand. And these Shefet Dunes can also definitely add up. So our opponent can Embalm Anointer Priest here, which would gain them a whole bunch of life. Instead just a second Fumigate, well, we weren't beating that anyways. Ramunap Ruins the draw. So what's our best draw at this point? More Monstrosaurs or Huatlis? Things are looking pretty grim here. And there we see Embalmed Anointer Priest with 1,000,000 triggers. So our opponent gains 2 off of each since they see each other entering the battlefield. Opponent back up to 21. Renegade map. So opponent only 1 card left in hand. They only have 2 creatures currently, so they're not going to transform Legion's Landing quite yet, but they're definitely close. So we'll keep playing this out until our opponent can show us another way of making tokens, and then we might throw in the towel. Angel of Sanctions, that's pretty effective here. Can exile or Sunwing. Don't have any great ways of removing the Angel, but that's a good one to know about after Sideboard. Kind of a non-bow with Fumigate, I guess. Opponent gets in for 2. Ferocidon is kind of the card we need here, but I'm not sure if it's going to be good enough. Opponent will still be able to transform a Legion's Landing, but of course those tokens now won't be gaining our opponent any life. So we'll give it a couple more turns here to see if our opponent can deal with the Ferocidon. Another Angel of Sanctions, alright, that's good enough for me. On to sideboarding, so do we have any great answers to Angel of Sanction? We do have 2 Thopter Arrest, which are a little mopey if they don't have the Angel of Sanctions. I guess it can exile an Anointer Priest, so it's not the worst. So maybe we want those over the Horncrest. I could see that. Or over the Lightning Strike perhaps. Yeah, that seems reasonable. So we'll try something like this. Would like to be on the play. Fortunately no lands. So that's an easy mulligan. This is a decent keep. With a cost reducer, a dino and a Fragmentize, looking for more dinos basically. And Ferocidon is excellent, so we'll keep that. So Vantage go. And then even if our opponent has removal for the Huntmaster, we get to play out the Ferocidon on 3. Opponent does have Legion's Landing on 1, but no need to use Fragmentize quite yet. Huntmaster go. Opponent does have the Swamp. Do they also have the Fatal Push? They have the Stockpile instead, which I think is something we should probably kill with our Fragmentize. So we find Dinosaur Stampede. Yeah, I think I'm down with destroying the Stockpile here. Could keep Fragmentize for Anointed Procession, but if our opponent doesn't have a way to make tokens, then the Procession doesn't do much. Give Ferocidon haste, get in for 3. So kind of the ideal start from our side. Let's see if the opponent can answer what we're doing here. This is where we don't mind seeing Anointer Priests from the opponent that don't really do much. No attack from the Vampire. Shefet Dunes a draw, so I guess we're just running out Aerosaur, targeting the Ferocidon, give the Aerosaur hastes, get in for 7. Don't really see another play here. Opponent could have a start to finish here, I guess. But us giving the Ferocidon flying and +1/+1 means they won't be able to ambush it. Alright, let's move to combat. Get in for a healthy 7. Opponent's at 10. Alright, so we might be doing it here. And there we might see the start to finish. That was unable to ambush our Ferocidon thanks to our Aerosaur. So opponent loses 2 to the Ferocidon, down to 8. And next turn Dinosaur Stampede could be good enough. Although our opponent does get to potentially transform Legion's Landing here, which could give them access to 5 mana for Fumigate. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Transforming the Legion's Landing also gives them access to the Angel of Sanctions, which would be pretty good here. So yeah, that Legion's Landing in the end proved to be more important than the hidden stockpile, so perhaps we should have destroyed that instead. Either way, our opponent also has the option of casting Finish to destroy one of our dinosaurs, so they might just go for that instead. So we're down to 16. And what's the play here? Opponent's got 2 cards in hand. Alright, so it looks like our opponent is casting Finish, so Ferocidon down and a second Legion's Landing, so now our opponent does get to gain life from those vampires. Skyterror the draw, that's actually quite good here. So if we run out Skyterror, give it haste, get in for 5, put the opponent to 3, opponent gains 2 life, back up to 5 at the very least, unless they use Shefet Dunes, and then they're dead on the way back. If they use Shefet Dunes, they're also still dead to the Dinosaur Stampede. So I think the plan is just to run out the Skyterror here, and hope our opponent doesn't have either Angel of Sanctions or Fumigate. So our opponent's at 3, and let's see if they can get out of this. So on board they are still alive since they can just use Shefet Dunes to gain 4 with the vampires back up to 7. But I guess they would be dead to us drawing a land to use our own Shefet Dunes. But this Dinosaur Stampede could make the difference, even though it hasn't looked all that great so far. So it looks like our opponent's just going to get in for 2 lifelink damage, so they might have another follow-up here. Hopefully no Angel of Sanctions. Instead just a Fatal Push on the Aerosaur. And we drew a Huntmaster. So if we attack with both here, our opponent can make a Vampire with the Adanto and double block the Huntmaster. So it wouldn't be great if we use the Stampede here, since our opponent wouldn't be dead. So I think the play is just to get in for 2 with Sky Terror, run out the Huntmaster, and then hopefully be able to Stampede next turn. So our opponent's at 3. Well, if this Stampede were a Lightning Strike, we would have won the game by now, so perhaps not the best sideboard card. Opponent makes a token. But if they don't attack, they're dead to a top-decked land for Shefet Dunes here, so they might send in a Vampire or 2 just to gain life. Or I guess they can just use the Shefet Dunes to gain a bunch of life all at once. But that does open up the attack back with the Huntmasters and the Stampede. Luckily for us, this is only at sorcery speed, so we know beforehand which blocks to make. Just a hidden stockpile from the opponent, so I imagine we will see an attack from at least 1 Vampire, otherwise they're dead to a top deck land, but given that we have the Dinosaur Stampede in hand, they're probably just dead here. Well, they're actually sending in everyone, so that does change things significantly, since they will still get a token from the stockpile and a lifelinking token from the Adanto, so they'll go back up to 6. We can take out 2 lifelinkers, we can take out a warrior and a lifelinker, but then they can still block with a servo and another lifelinker. But then I guess they would probably double block, in which case 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, I think we actually take out one of the vigilance creatures instead of one of the lifelinkers, just to open up an attack with one of the Huntmasters, which makes the Stampede a lot better. Opponent sacrifices one of the creatures, so they get to scry. So our opponent will go back up to 6, have 2 blockers. And Thopter Arrest to draw. Wait, actually our opponent doesn't have enough mana to use a Adanto here, so just an attack with everyone should be game. So let's send in everyone. Use a Stampede. And that should probably do it here. So even if our opponent blocks, they take 7, and that does it. Sweet, managed to beat black-white tokens with our dinosaur deck. We did have to draw pretty well here, and our opponent also mulliganed, I believe. But still, a win is a win, and I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day. I also want to thank all my patrons for supporting the channel, and you can do so yourself as well over at patreon.com/LegenVD, where you get cool rewards for supporting the channel, as well as getting us closer to our goals, where with every goal reached, we will release an additional weekly series. So if you want to see more content, Patreon is the place to go.